Sense America with Eden Cornell. Yeah.
And good morning, Common Sense America. We are in the last Monday of February. It is Monday, February the 27th, and it is going to be a great week here at Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill. Thank you so much for joining us. And I tell you what, wow, what a great weekend. I hope you guys got some rest. I hope you have felt restored. I hope you are ready because we have a great week ahead here at Common Sense America. You know, last Friday, I got a call and it was, get up here to CPAC. We got a lot going on this coming week and we want you here. Okay, I got the call and we're going. So this morning, Victoria Churchill will be joining us in just a few minutes here at Common Sense America. And she's going to be giving us a preview with American Liberty News on what is ahead for CPAC. CPAC is the Conservative Principal Actions Conference that happens every year. It's been going on for a long time. I have had the honor to attend it for many, many years, whether I was a communications person for a member of Congress, or I was doing a book tour, or I was helping Media Row with the conference at the Gaylord. But also last year, I attended as a candidate for State House. And, you know, it was great to be in Florida last year where Governor DeSantis hosted CPAC actually for the past 2 years in Florida because of COVID. And as you all know, Florida remained free. Florida remained open. Well, this week it is back in Maryland at the Gaylord at National Harbor. And I'm a little bummed that it's not in Florida. Obviously, I'd rather be in sunny, beautiful Florida in February and March, but it is what it is. We're headed back to the nation's capital. And we, as the conservatives and the conservative Republican movement and those of faith, we will all gather starting Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday and Saturday, which will, what I've told is will end the conference with President Donald Trump speaking. So we have a great week ahead of us. This week, we will also, you know, a surprise, American Liberty News and also here Common Sense America will be going live from Radio Row on Friday and Saturday of this week. And as you will hear from Victoria and I, we have a great lineup of guests that will be joining us on Radio Row, and maybe some surprises for both you and us, because you never know who you're going to run into on Radio Row. You never know who's going to be around, and then they're there, and then you have the opportunity to interview them. Some interviews may be audio recorded and some may be live, but we're going to have a blast. And I tell you what, I have a great collection of high heels from my time running for State House. But the reason why I say that is I'm going to be wearing my red, white, and blue patriotic high heels while I'm at CPAC, showing my true colors of God, country, and family, showing in my belief and representing Common Sense America, representing you, the audience, representing all of those who have supported the show since the end of my candidacy last year, and representing what I believe in. I am a podcast host. I am a veteran spouse. I am a conservative. I am a speaker. And most importantly, I am a child of God. And that is very important to me, especially as we have some very powerful conversations that are happening in and around our nation. But without further ado, I am so glad to bring over to the show American Liberty News. We have Victoria Churchill, and I tell you what, hey Victoria, good morning. I'm a little slow in my coffee this morning. I've had 3 mugs, but it's just not kicking in as quick as it usually does. I think I had a longer weekend than I realized. How are you?
I am great, Eden. How are you? So great to be back with you this morning. I think
I'm
the
so
coffee is hitting a little bit slow on my end as well.
I mean, I got plenty of rest this weekend, but I also was doing schoolwork this weekend. And then I was also getting bombarded with a lot of comments from the show I did last week, a couple shows on child abuse in school systems here. So I was kind of inundated with those comments. I was inundated with school, and then I took some naps. So there you go. But I am ready for CPAC this week. Are you ready?
I think I'm ready. I know you and I did a little bit of chatting definitely off camera about great plans that we have. So, definitely excited. It's the first time CPAC is back in DC in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And, really pre-COVID times, CPAC was one of the last events that conservatives got to enjoy. It was between that and APAC. And, actually from both of those conferences, there was rumors that like members had come down with it. So I remember at first I was kind of bummed that I didn't get to go because at the time I was in Iowa working on the Trump reelect. But after all those things came out, I felt a little bit better about not being in DC. Let's say that's
Yeah.
definitely the case there. But it's definitely an interesting time with Iowa, somewhere where I spent quite a bit of time. A lot of these presidential candidates are making appearances there. Some of them for the first time. Some of them for the first time as candidates, but the Iowa audiences are very familiar with pretty much everybody that's running for president at this time. And a lot of these people will be speaking at CPAC this week as well. So it's kind of a good, an interesting time to kind of look back on what I was doing this time, last CPAC that was in DC, but also seeing how that transitions to what we've got going on today. Both Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy, they have both done book tours in Iowa. And, I think Mike Pence, somebody that we're all anticipating is going to jump into the race. You can definitely correct me if I'm mistaken, but I believe he's actually not making an appearance at CPAC.
He's not. And neither is DeSantis.
Yeah, that is quite surprising because, you'd think for the base, that would be a great place to connect with the base, especially, again, looking back at what I was doing this time in the 2020 cycle, 2019 and 2020. 2020 had just started. Obviously, like I mentioned, the pandemic was just kind of getting started as well, putting a damper on things on the campaign end. That's definitely a good way to say it. But, what we were doing on the ground is, I think, what a lot of these candidates are trying to do. They're trying to build infrastructure in early states, which means being very connected with the base, people that, really a lot of the times, yes, you might have somebody that isn't a paid role, but kind of under them, lifting them up in their efforts. You have a lot of people that are going to be doing this work for free. And, that is your base. And, that's definitely one of the things that I remember how hard it was to recruit people to do what was at times, definitely at least a part-time job, if not a full-time job that you were really expecting of your volunteers. And so, these are the people that have a lot of time. These are the people that are very passionate about conservatism, about issues, about who these potential nominees might be.
Right.
And if you're not at CPAC connecting with them, my question is, kind of what are you doing? And where are you going to get those volunteers that are going to put you through a caucus state like Iowa, where, even in my job that I had in 2020, one of the things that we had to do is we had to get speakers for every single caucus location in the county in favor of the president. And that was hard enough, even without any other opponents, without any other Republicans running. But, just getting that, and I had to do that across 2 counties. And one of the largest counties, which is in the Iowa City area, Johnson County, Iowa. And then it's kind of neighbor county, Washington County, Iowa. It's home to a pretty great casino if you've ever been there.
No, I didn't get to go when I was out there.
Republican events. And, actually definitely, I think somewhere where some of these candidates might be doing a fundraiser or 2 in the next few months. That'll definitely be not surprising to see if they choose to utilize that location. It's the Riverside Casino. That's kind of what I think Washington County, Iowa is known for. But, kind of other than that, it's, like I said, it was a heavy lift even without a field of, what could potentially be a dozen plus candidates. And, you have to connect with those grassroots somewhere. And like I mentioned, I'm surprised that a lot of these people are choosing not to go to CPAC to find those people.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see, obviously, as kind of the Democrats have illustrated by not picking Iowa to be a caucus state early this year. Or I guess next year, sorry, for 2024, but, early in the cycle, performance in Iowa doesn't always dictate performance down the road, but it is a very good place to set a tone for your campaign.
Yes, it is.
So, I think especially for Republicans, great performance in Iowa, as well as South Carolina, New Hampshire, still very important. I think New Hampshire, maybe I might be corrected down the line, but I think New Hampshire has actually had a permanent kind of Republican RNC grassroots team there, I believe, since the 2016 midterm, or since 2016 through the 2018 midterms, through the 2020 year. Obviously, this past year, I know they were there because New Hampshire was a very important state in terms of picking up some congressional seats. And, even though those didn't end up going our way, there was still a great effort behind them. And, one of the interesting things that you get to do when you are a party staffer in one of these states, not necessarily for a candidate, is that you have to build enthusiasm without necessarily knowing who the nominee is. And again, I know that that's something that had to happen in New Hampshire because New Hampshire has one of the latest primaries in terms of congressional primaries. They have a September primary. And like I said, they're still early on the primary schedule in presidential years, but
well, let me ask you
they're
something.
one of the latest. So they had people there, recruiting volunteers saying, hey, basically when we have a candidate, they're going to have to plug into this infrastructure because it was quite a divisive primary there, especially I believe it was the first district with Caroline Leavitt and Matt Mowers are two big people even in the Trump community. So even that community was pretty divided between those two candidates. So that's kind of an interesting thing to see going forward is how these infrastructures are going to be built, not even just in early states, but also in other key swing states across the country.
Yeah. Did you see how Tim Scott from South Carolina was talking on one of the morning shows this weekend? I was listening to it on the Philly station. They were just talking about it in the news headlines, townhall.com, but he was talking about where there needs to be a space for him as well. Because has he officially announced, or is he just dancing around the topic? That part I couldn't discern.
I think he has just been dancing around the topic, as you mentioned. He was a speaker, I believe it was at the Polk County GOP dinner in Iowa. So Polk County is obviously the county that has Des Moines, so it's the most populous area in the entire state. So definitely very important in terms of, like I said, picking up those caucus votes, caucus support for, just around this time next year really is when the caucus is. It's less than a year away, which is kind a little bit hard to believe. I feel like I was just in Iowa yesterday, but it's been 3 months or 3 years since I lived there. So again, or I guess 2 years going on the third year. But, like I said, those early states are in full swing. And one thing that I learned being a grassroots staffer in that state is that those people really never turn off from politics. They're always on. And that's why kind of they have this, kind of very high threshold to have candidates kind of impress them. And so that's why kind of being in the state constantly, and like I said, it's not just Iowa, it's also New Hampshire, also South Carolina, having a constant presence in these states, whether it's, book tours, or New Hampshire has its Iowa, or not Iowa, it's Institute of Politics at the St. Anselm University, which hosts a lot of these candidates as well. So, kind of being in the news in those states is very important for all of these people. And Tim Scott is definitely one of the people that has been doing that. So I would be surprised if he doesn't run. I know obviously him and former Ambassador Haley are good friends. And I think there was kind of this, I don't really necessarily want to say tension, but there was this effort where, maybe one of them would run and one of them wouldn't. But I think that might not end up being the case. So it'll definitely be interesting to see.
Well, I want to ask you, I haven't played it since it initially came out, Haley's campaign video launch for her running for the presidency. And my father is an avid, he really likes Nikki Haley. He reads all of her books. And I know a lot of people in his age group, that baby boomer, Vietnam veteran generation, really like her. They're really in tune to her. But then there's others who are not. And as we both sit here as professional women in our own rights, but we both are professionals because we've worked hard to get where we are, not because we're women, not because of our backgrounds. And I do want to talk about that with your article on American Liberty News. I want to make sure we talk about that. But my concern to the ambassador's campaign video was she immediately kicked off with race and talking about her race. Why does that even have to be necessarily a topic? And why did she have to kick it off in her campaign video? And the other thing that she's getting a lot of heat on is that age piece and that mental health check piece as well. And so, I've heard different commentators, left and right and center, say all their different scenarios on the ambassador's campaign video, and that she's going to be at CPAC this week. And if we get the chance to talk to her, it would be great. I don't know if we will, knowing how crazy Media Row can be. But I want to understand, instead of her, why couldn't she have just kicked off her campaign video? This is who I am. I am a candidate for president of the United States, not this is X, Y, and Z. She identified herself. And that whole race politics thing is really getting overdone. I don't know if you're tired of it yet, but I'm fed up with it. And I, from a faith standpoint, I am all about seeing people for who they are, and their integrity and their love of God, their love of country, and their love of family, not for the woman, the man, and any other color going along with that. I am Hungarian, and I have the attitude of Hungarian, but I don't necessarily talk about that all the time. And I have the attitude of growing up in New York and Pennsylvania, living in a Southern territory, but I don't necessarily talk about that all the time. Anyway, I digress. What are your thoughts on her whole campaign video?
Well, I think we actually did end up having an episode together right as she had announced. I think overall the video is interesting because obviously within the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, people have to play to their bases in the primaries and the caucuses, and then they have to come to the middle. Mm-hmm. So I think her messaging is a little bit more middle heavy early on. I think that was the intent behind that video. I think obviously commenting on issues of race and gender, they are issues that are very prevalent in the media. They are issues that, we cover at American Liberty News because we know they're going to get clicks, right? Like, let's be honest, saying, something about a gender issue or a race issue, those are things that get media eyes. And so I think on that front, it has been successful for her. But I don't know how it's going to play with the Republican base. I have read her books. I actually listened to it on audiobook. So I actually got to hear her story in her own words.
Yeah.
And, I've read a lot of other people's books. I've actually got Christy Noem's book right here.
Yeah. Same here.
Yeah, right now it's propping up my laptop to put it a little bit higher, but I promise I am reading it. Dual purpose with hardcover books, because I do use hardcover books, audiobooks, books on Kindle. I kind of run the full gamut, but when I can get my hands on a hardcover copy, I do like to get that because, like I said, it does serve multiple purposes. But kind of besides that, I think that's again something that maybe a little bit less favorable with the base is that messaging. But I think too often Republican candidates struggle with being too conservative in the primary to win and then not being able to bridge that gap. I think that's something that we saw just this last cycle in 2022 is that, the MAGA base nominated these very good candidates for our issues, but they were not always able to bridge the gap with the middle. And, as Republicans have lost the popular vote, I think since, pretty much for the last 20 years, if not more, that is definitely a concern. And for those people that are planning to stay in the race for a while, that is a very valid concern. So I can kind of see what their messaging, obviously, tactic is. Again, not sure how well that's going to play. Maybe not necessarily might be a move that I would have made if I was their consultant, but, I'm not. And neither are you. So, we're here to talk about it and criticize it. But at the end of the day, it might end up serving them a little bit better down the road.
Yeah. Once I become one of their consultants, I won't be able to have the show. That's right.
Exactly. Right. We have our freedom to spew our opinions out here just because we don't have that job.
Yeah. I was looking, I don't get my DeSantis book until tomorrow, and I've been waiting with a bated breath to get this book. And, it may just be a repeat of everything that I've studied on the governor of Florida since COVID, because really things really shifted during that time period. But New York Post did an excerpt, I believe it was on, it was Saturday the 18th, and I'm going to read it during the last half of the show, because I know you have to get going in a few minutes. But I'm eager to read it. But I also let's go back to CPAC for a hot second. You mentioned some of these candidates not coming to CPAC, and then I saw some of the commentary. DeSantis goes to the beat of his own drum. I get that. And I'm kind of the same way. I almost didn't come to CPAC until people like yourself and others said, get your tickets here. We got work to do. I'm like, all right, I'm coming. But the other thought is something else I've noticed about CPAC in recent years. They had such a great flavor and a great audience while they were in Freedom, Florida. And, going back to National Harbor and, as a lot of people call it the swamp, as Trump calls the swamp, but can I say even more? It's in Maryland. And that's not necessarily a very free state. It's more of communism than anything. And gosh darn it, I'm not going to be wearing my mask in the Gaylord. And I'm putting it out there right now. But the other piece that's of concern to me is it seems as though the price of CPAC has gone up. And I've talked to quite a few people, and they're not going because of that. So maybe it is in the best interest of some of these candidates not to go, saying, hey, I'm with a lot of the American people who can't afford to go to CPAC this year. I barely can afford to put food on my table. I think there's a lot of people in that category. And, my friend Chris DeGaulle at 990 AM Philly said this morning, he even said yesterday at church, one of his friends says, oh, I wish I could go. He's like, well, don't worry about it. Save your money. Just listen to the show and you'll get the full coverage of it. And so what are your thoughts on that? Because perhaps there are a lot of other people out there who want to get involved, but can't literally afford to get involved. They can't literally afford to go to CPAC or fly to DC or Reagan Airport or Dulles or whatever. So what are your thoughts to those young Americans who are, who have traveled like you have, like I have, and passed on campaign trails? What are your summer recommendations for those who necessarily can't afford to get to CPAC this year and are kind of following in the space of, well, DeSantis isn't necessarily think it's important, so and we want to support him, or Scott or whomever else? What are your thoughts on that?
So first off, I want to say this is actually going to be my fourth CPAC, and every single time I've gone in a different capacity. So I've gone on a student ticket, I've gone with an organization that was sponsoring, I've worked backstage, and now I'm going as media. So I have kind of always found my way to go, other than the time that I was working on the campaign, because it was important for me to go. And when I was in college, there was no way I would have been able to afford to go as an adult. Even this year, even though my company is helping sponsor part of my attendance,
sure,
I don't live too far, so I'm taking an Uber probably one of the days, and I'm driving the other day. So there's definitely always ways to cut costs, and that's one thing that I found during my time being involved in college, where I live somewhere where rent was $500 a month, and I had a job that paid me $400 a month, and I had to figure out how to make up that in between. And by the way, that job was a campaign job. That was my first campaign job. Or actually, I think at that time my rent was $375. So I had $25 at the end of the month outside of that. So I went and I found another job. I think at one point in college, I had 3 jobs to be able to afford to do this. But it's even something that I'm looking at. Actually, tonight I'm running to be chair of my Young Republicans chapter.
That's wonderful.
So exciting. Yeah, Arlington Falls Church area. I believe I'm the only declared candidate. So fingers crossed nobody tries to kind of slip in a sneaky nomination on me. So hopefully I'll be fulfilling that role. But that's even something I'm looking at, where that would involve travel outside the state and potentially across the country. And that would have to come out of my own pocket. So being involved in the party is not cheap, especially as an adult. I think kind of the older that you get, it's harder to play the I'm the young person card. So like sponsor me or help me out. And again, if I were to become the chair tonight of my club, that's actually something I'm going to be having to do, is sponsor young people's activities, even just across the Commonwealth. And personally, I have a very vast political background, but fundraising is not something that I've spent a lot of time doing. So, that's definitely something that I'm a little bit nervous about. I know there's obviously ways to do that, but that's even something I'm going to have to learn if I am elected to this role tonight. But my first CPAC, I went on a student ticket. I think the student ticket is still about $50. And for a hotel, we rented a suite at it was like a timeshare on Airbnb at one of the neighboring hotels. It was like 4 bedrooms, and we slept about 12 of us in there. So we each paid about $200, I think, to go for 4 days, when typically one room at the Gaylord is like,
it's about $400.
Yeah, it's about $400 a night right now. So at that point, like, some of us slept on the floor. I think I was like, there was couches and beds and floor and everything. And I think at that point I might have just like pulled off all the pillows and just slept on the floor, because that was the only way I could have gone. And I've done that for more than one event in DC. Again, specifically thinking back to the time when I was a college student. So, throwing that out there, if you want to go, there is a way to go.
Now
And then
that's
again, I think,
determination.
yeah,
It has nothing to do with entitlement, ladies and gentlemen. That has to do with determination, conviction, and passion for belief. That is
exactly.
impressive. You just grab pillows and you sleep. Yes, that's
Yeah, and I
exactly.
mean, those people are some of my best friends. Some of them I ended up interning with later on in DC throughout the years. Some of them work in DC now, so it's really a great way to build camaraderie. Like I said, find some really lifelong friends, and even some of these people I might not talk to on a daily basis. I might not talk to even in a few months, but when I hit them up, some of these people, like I said, are still some of my best friends today that I had those experiences with. So that's kind of part one. I've also gone with sponsoring organizations. If you are a young person in college looking to get involved, I know you've interviewed some, young Turning Point CR students. There's definitely opportunities through those organizations to go. A lot of them will either pay for your student ticket and you might exchange it for some hours working at a booth in kind of the CPAC hub area. I think they're calling it CPAC Central this year. That's what I did the second year I went to CPAC. I went with Network of Enlightened Women, great group. I'm still involved in their young professional chapter here today. It's how I met Kimmy, which is how I met Eden. So again, these connections just like keep going on and on and on. But when I went with New, I believe they paid for both my airfare and my student ticket. And then a lot of the time, if you're a sponsor, you also get like access to like some food and stuff too. You get like a little ticket, for a sandwich. Like I said, you'll survive. You're not going to be eating crab cakes down the street, which is, fingers crossed, hoping what I'll be able to do now that I'm an adult. But like I wasn't doing that when I was coming at 19 and 20 years old. So, surviving CPAC is also like another, I could probably do like an hour just on how to get there, how to survive.
Yes, exactly.
And then, an Uber from the airport, again, it's like $50. But if you split it with 8 other people,
you're good to go.
You can make it work. So again, there's a method to making this happen.
To the madness. Yeah.
And then the final time that I went, which was 2019 up until this year, where I get to go as media, I was an intern at Leadership Institute. So again, I know LI sponsors a bunch of students to work their booth, help a lot of their events. I don't know if they're doing that this year, but in the past, they've put people up at the LI dorms, which are here in Arlington. And then again, yes, you have to wake up at 6 a.m. to help them with stuff, and it's not glamorous. And at least at the time, the bar above LI had like karaoke till midnight. So you basically had to sleep from about 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. And then get your butt over to National Harbor. But, again, I know dozens of people that have gone that way throughout the years. And if you're looking to cut costs and not even stay in the harbor, that is an option that has been out there in the past. So again, lots of ways. And like I said, at that point, I was actually already interning for LI. So I got to work backstage, which was super fun. Backstage, main stage. I was backstage for every single speaker except the president and the vice president because Secret Service cleared us out.
Right.
So, like I said, I've had a wide variety of CPAC experiences, and I'm definitely looking to go this time as media. I know I've kind of picked your brain because I'm like, am I booking people in advance? Am I kind of walking up to people like, hey, what am I doing? Like, let's chat. So
well, I'll tell you what, for all those who are tuning in here at Common Sense America, they're going to have a special treat on Friday and Saturday. And, I'm going to be traveling up Thursday, and Mr. Craig is coming with me, my traveling partner, my husband,
awesome.
my favorite person in the world who's coming with me. But then, so Friday morning, I have some special surprises for you. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you right now. So we're going to be broadcasting live from Radio Row Friday morning, 10 a.m. here, Common Sense America. But we also have Project 2025 going to be joining the show from Heritage Foundation. We have Color Us United talking about the woke medicine in North Carolina joining us. And we have a famous New York City photographer, Barry Morgenstein, is going to be joining our show, talking about all of the conservatives and all the amazing people he has worked with as a photographer in one of the most liberal cities in the nation, New York City. And so we're going to be talking with him. He does a lot of interviews, but he has such a great perspective on his work. And then we also have some other surprises. And I mentioned to the audience before you hopped on, you never know who you're going to run into on Radio Row. And then that's when you just pull out your phone and start recording interviews with people that you've been wanting to talk to. It may not be scheduled, it may not be set up, it just may be in that moment in time. You get that record, you get it out, and you start asking questions, and you get a 5-minute interview, maybe with the President of the United States, Donald Trump, maybe with Marco Rubio, maybe with whoever shows up. But that's the great thing about CPAC and Radio Row. You just never know who you're going to be rubbing elbows with. Most of the time, it's pretty exciting. And some tips for those who are going to be coming this year, who may be coming for the first time: drink plenty of water, drink plenty of coffee. They have a food court full of Starbucks, and make sure you bring your extra pods as well for your hotel rooms. Bring protein bars and bring fruit. You will be good to go. That gives you plenty of energy to get through the day. But on that note, any other final notes? And I know you wanted to talk quickly about your article on American Liberty News, since they are going to be covering CPAC. But there's something very important about this article. I love your background. I love how you brought that to the article, and I will be sharing it in the comments section for everyone who's following Common Sense America this morning. Talk to us about your article.
Yeah, well, so, this weekend I got a chance to publish an article on American Liberty News, a commentary piece about the war in Russia and Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And, I haven't talked much about it kind of throughout the past year, because I've honestly just been watching. But I felt that this year mark was an important opportunity to look back on what the past year has been for myself, as somebody that is both Russian and Ukrainian in heritage. And I'm also first generation naturalized American. I don't really see many voices like my own in the conversation. So I thought that this would be an appropriate time to kind of comment on that. I wrote a piece looking at some of the media that has come out from Russian artists, YouTube creators, musicians, kind of as an anti-war messaging tool. So it was definitely very interesting to look at. I've previously analyzed Russian pop culture and media during a project I got to do in college. I kind of looked at it through kind of having had that lens, where I think a lot of westernized media that was being produced in Russia was meant with the intention to westernize Russia. Now it's a lot of these artists, they have moved out of Russia because they wouldn't have been able to keep creating their art, their content, because of the censorship that exists within that government. And so a lot of these artists have left, and they have become kind of the leaders of this anti-war movement. And really, they can kind of penetrate a lot of these bubbles that, might not necessarily watch the news day to day. I think a lot of young people, unfortunately, still don't really keep up with current events. But if they see it in a medium like YouTube, or they see it in a rap music video, that might be a way to kind of get through to them and say, hey, pay attention to what's going on. It matters. And I think these artists have done a really great job of doing that. And so I wanted to share that with, an audience that is primarily American that might not have seen it before. Definitely check out the article. Even we'll have it linked. And I'd love to chat more about it if there's anything you want to ask me about it specifically.
Yeah, no, I just linked it, and also your bio as well for people to see on the YouTube channel and also the Facebook channel. And then we'll repost it on LinkedIn as well and share it. But no, that's really important. We have here in North Carolina neighbors right down the street from us, or from Ukraine. And they have become dear friends to us. And it's just been interesting to see how they came here for freedom, how they came here to raise their family, and everything that is happening over there, and the year anniversary. Let me ask you this, what was your initial take on Biden traveling over there on President's Day? How did that make you feel, because of your background and then writing this article? Did it initially why aren't you here taking care of, the United States, or did you see it in a different light? Because I've heard different sides to it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wasn't the biggest fan. I think it's honestly a show of too little, too late. And tonight at my Young Republicans meeting, I'm actually interviewing my friend Karina Lipsman. She ran for Congress here in Virginia's 8th Congressional District. She is also, she was a refugee from Ukraine in the 80s, and has kind of grown up in the greater DC region. But one of the questions I'm actually planning on asking her is, it's interesting because actually Nancy Pelosi was the first person to go to Ukraine, and then Kamala Harris went to Poland, and then now President Biden is going to Ukraine almost a year later. Again, I think it's a little bit too late. First of all, why was Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi at the time Speaker of the House going and kind of being a figurehead for U.S. foreign policy? That's not necessarily a person you think of being a voice for America on the international stage. It's the president, it's the vice president, secretary of state, maybe somebody like, Nikki Haley when she had her role as UN ambassador, going and talking to all these foreign leaders. But you don't really think of the Speaker of the House doing that, especially not really by themselves. They often do lead congressional delegations. That is definitely something that happens within Congress. They have both congressional delegations and staff delegations. That is commonplace. But to go pretty much by herself, and even when she went to Taiwan, it was just with a purely Democrat delegation. I think that sends some very interesting messages about U.S. foreign policy that I think are definitely, very open to being discussed in a way that they really, I don't think, have been. Because again, even though she is no longer Speaker of the House, during her really last year as Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, like I mentioned, went to Ukraine and Taiwan, and I think kind of elevated America's involvement both against Russia and against China. So I don't know if she's maybe even like kind of like a trendsetter in an interesting, in a weird way. But like I said, a lot of those foreign leaders have been there. Again, when he was Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson went there. So or at least met with Zelensky. So and that a lot of the comments that I saw going around kind of the Twitterverse, especially with conservatives at the time, was why isn't America there? But I think a lot of people were asking that 6 months ago, 9 months ago, not today.
Right. No, I also wonder, I mean, you heard David Muir's interview last week with Biden talking about, are we going to send our fighter jets over there? And he kept asking him, and he wasn't giving him a direct answer. And you wonder, how much more are we sending? How much more money are we sending? And, we could go down a rabbit hole on that and that. But, you just wonder about the money that we're sending over there that's being taken off of our kitchen table. The money that's being taken out of our savings account is going there. But you wonder, is it coming back to Biden? Is it, is he skimming the pockets? You wonder about that. And you hear all those things and you just kind of sit there and say, but we, the American people, what about us? And, I have a lot of compassion for those in Ukraine, but you also sit here and say, it's just like you said, a little too late now in regards to that. Okay, one final note, and I'm going to let you go because I know you have a busy day and we have a busy week ahead. We have a lot of work to get done. American Liberty News, Victoria Churchill, what do you think? Do you think we're going to see any surprises at CPAC? Do you think now you're there as media. Now I've been doing it for 15, 20 years, and I've lost count how many years I've been doing it in official capacity and volunteer capacity or whatever. But there's always a surprise. What do you think we may see? Have you heard any rumblings or any indication of any kind of surprises?
I personally haven't. I think if there is surprise, I hope it's DeSantis.
Me too. I was really kind of setting you up for that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but I guess it was. But yes, like I said, I think if there is, I hope it's him, because I think that's somewhere where he needs to be to connect with the grassroots. And kind of like I mentioned, this is really going to be my first time going not as a student. So I know that a lot of students do go. And again, that's really most of the time the people that are going to have the time and the commitment and, the ability to work sometimes 14, 16 hours a day on a presidential campaign.
Yes.
That's going to be your 19-year-olds, your 20-year-olds, especially when it's physical door knocking, in the heat and, in something like Iowa where you have 100-degree heat and 80% humidity. I will say I did have a couple volunteer door knockers that loved doing it, and they were like 65, almost 70. But they were kind of the exceptions to the rule, to the point where like I still remember them very distinctly. But a lot of the time your grassroots infrastructure is the younger volunteers. So again, I think he should be there connecting with those people, especially when President Trump Ambassador Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, all of these people will be doing that. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I really hope he doesn't miss out.
I know. I hope so. I hope not. I mean, last year's speech, I almost pulled the transcripts from last year's speech at the Orlando CPAC last year. And my favorite ending to his speech was be strong, be courageous, put on the full armor of God. And he had everybody up on their feet, clapping and cheering because they needed to hear that. And the other thing he said was, all right, take him, get him back to Delaware, get him out of Florida, in regards to all the immigration issues that we're having. But on that note, I look forward to running CPAC with you on Friday and maybe Saturday with you. I know I'll be there Saturday, but I'm excited to be there. I'm excited to serve. I'm excited to really just have a blast and capture some powerful interviews and really just be a part of the great process of what this is. And that's the United States of America. And really, the freedom of speech, power to the freedom to gather together. I mean, there's so many powerful things to this conference. So on that note, have a great week. I'll see you Friday, bright and early.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be co-hosting the show with you. We're definitely looking forward to having some great conversations, and safe travels up here, and I'll see you very soon.
All right. Have a good week. I'll see you soon. Thanks, Victoria Churchill, American Liberty News writer and digital content editor. Make sure you go check out American Liberty News. I posted the link to her brand new article. All right. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Bye. And for all those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. It is 9:40 a.m. Eastern Time. It's Monday, February the 27th. It is the last Monday in February. I cannot believe we are headed into March. And yes, I look out the window and we have a lot of flowers popping up. This weather has been crazy. Cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot. Anyway. It's kind of like our government, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to go over some of the news items of the week. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about CPAC, what we can expect. I'm excited to have you guys join us at CPAC on Friday and Saturday. We were given the opportunity to broadcast from CPAC Radio Row Friday and Saturday. I will be there with American Liberty News, with Victoria Churchill, and we have many guests coming to join us on Friday and also Saturday. So I'm excited to see you guys and hear your comments. If there's anybody you want to hear from, or any interviews, or any politicians, or people that are in the news headlines that you are eager to hear from, let us know. Drop us comments. I get a lot of comments from you guys, both privately and publicly, but mostly private. And feel free just to send me notes, text message me, email me. Go to Facebook, go to LinkedIn, go to YouTube, go to Twitter, go to all my social accounts and drop me lines. I love hearing from you guys. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. And we're back here at Common Sense America. I have a little bit more coffee in my system. It is Monday morning, I tell you. We have a great week ahead. We have a lot of new guests that we're going to be featured at CPAC on Friday and Saturday of this week. And our schedule may be a little different here this week because of us going to CPAC, but we look forward to having you tune in when we are live Friday and Saturday from CPAC with American Liberty News, and a lot of new guests who will be joining the show, and some surprise guests as well. So until that, I wanted to just kind of go over this New York Post article that came out on Saturday the 18th. And, yes, it was last Saturday the 18th. And it was focused on the news and exclusive DeSantis's new book, How the Florida Blueprint Can Work for the Whole United States. And so if you look at the stream we have posted right now, we have in the comments section, I am going to post right here. We have the link to the article. You can click on that. And then also, if you also want to hear about, I'm going to go back and forth a little bit. If you also want to follow Victoria at American Liberty News, here's the link right here. You can click on it in Facebook and in YouTube links, and also on Twitter, and I will be posting it on Instagram. Here is the link to American Liberty News where you can follow Victoria Churchill. She is a phenomenal writer. I'm really impressed with the work that she's bringing to the table with American Liberty News. And as you heard, she gave such great examples for the next generation who want to be a part of the process to elect the next Republican president of the United States. She mentioned Leadership Institute. She mentioned Young Republicans in your chapters around the nation. She mentioned there are also other groups. There's United Women Federation of Tennessee, but also has chapters around the nation. And also Turning Point USA. They are here on the show all the time. The Gulf region, the North Carolina region, we have them as guests a lot. And also Young Voices. They're also another great group to get involved with. So you have plenty of choices. And if you're on a tight budget and you really want to attend CPAC, that's the way to do it. So I would highly recommend looking into some of those options. But let me go back to the DeSantis piece that was published on the 18th. So his book is due out tomorrow. I pre-ordered it through Amazon, and I'm as you heard, very eager to get my hands on it. In November 2022, Governor Ron DeSantis made history in Florida, winning by nearly 1.5 million votes in a state known for its razor-thin election margins. And this is, again, from the New York Post article. His platform was equally historic and contrary to what is going on in the other parts of the United States, focused on freedom. Freedom. By enacting policies to keep progressive politics and woke ideology out of the classroom, taking back Disney's self-governance and tax breaks, and keeping his state open during the pandemic. The Yale-educated former naval officer has gained national attention and hundreds of thousands of new residents to the state of Florida. In this exclusive excerpt from his new book, The Courage to Be Free, Florida's Blueprint for America's Survival, DeSantis explains how he is preserving liberties in Florida and just might save the United States. My first term as governor was a whirlwind. I rejected using polls as a guide for governance because leadership is about shaping public opinion, not merely reacting to it. I made sure to be an active, energetic executive who leaned into issues and was consistently on offense. When the coronavirus pandemic hit, I consumed the data myself and made decisions that bucked the conventional wisdom. We also refused to bow down to the woke mob and fought ideological capture of our schools and fought back against big corporations that pursued a leftist agenda. We were met with fierce opposition from legacy media outlets every step of the way. But we stood our ground. We did not back down. Clearly, our administration was substantially consequential. How effective, though, was this as a political matter? We in Florida can lead the way on important issues and deliver historical results, but this might not be a blueprint for others to follow if it's led to electoral failure. The November 2022 election provided the answer. While winning re-election was not something that was guaranteed, the odds seemed good at the outset. After winning roughly half the vote in 2018 as an unknown commodity, it was obvious, based on 4 years of interactions with Floridians from all walks of life, that my support had only grown since then, especially after our battles to protect Floridians from mandates, school closures during the COVID pandemic. At the same time, major Florida elections had typically been decided by razor-thin margins. Prior to me becoming governor in 2019, the state's marquee races during the decade, gubernatorial elections in 2010, 2014, and 2018, and presidential elections in 2012 and 2016 had all been decided by a single percentage point or less. Winning by 5% would represent a landslide victory for a top-of-the-ticket candidate in Florida. The article continues on to talk in this excerpt, but as we end the show today here at Common Sense America, if you have not had a chance to go order The Courage to Be Free, Florida's Blueprint for America's Revival, Ron DeSantis, please do so. And as what Victoria and I talked about, we do hope that Governor DeSantis does end up surprising us at CPAC to join the CPAC crew, join Media Row, be a speaker. That would be absolutely phenomenal because we do want to hear from all the presidential candidates. And just like she said, she had mentioned that it will be the opportunity for so many young Americans to get involved and to get behind a candidate. And this is the opportune time. So even though I'm in the same camp as DeSantis, I go to the beat of my own drum. I do hope he shows up. I do hope he changes, and I do hope he does end up coming. Excuse me. On that note, we have a lot coming to you this week. And if you have any comments, thoughts, questions, or suggestions, feel free to message me. I look forward to hearing from you. And we will be up to date, keeping you up to date on all the new interviews we have coming this week from CPAC. I'm looking forward to being with you and looking forward to being live from CPAC this week. And until then, have a great Monday. We will see you in a couple days.